Good afternoon. Welcome to the second Bureau of Business Research webinar of the Fall 2020 series. My name is Mitch Harrion. I serve as Project Director at the Bureau of Business Research. The BBR is part of the Department of Economics within the College of Business here at UNL. Today, we'll be looking at how to use the Thriving Index interactive web tool. As I'll describe in more detail later, the Thriving Index allows rural Nebraskans to compare their region's performance on a wide range of outcomes relevant to community vitality and thriving. The interactive web tool that I'll show today is just one component of a broader study. I'd like to point out that the Thriving Index was completed through a collaboration between the UNL Bureau of Business Research, the University of Nebraska at Kearney, College of Business and Technology, and Rural Prosperity at UNL. I simply have the privilege of presenting the work that was a result of a collaborative effort between many individuals and organizations here in Nebraska. Before we begin today's presentation, I'd like to point out several features of the webinar. As you can see, I'll be using a PowerPoint presentation to present the information to you today. One feature of the webinar is a chat window where you can chat with other participants of the webinar. There's also a question and answer window where you can type in any questions that you might have for me. You can type in your questions at any time today, but I'll wait till the end of the presentation to take your questions and answer them. With that, I will begin today's presentation. Here's just a brief outline of what we'll be talking about today. I'll give a brief overview of the Nebraska Thriving Index. We will talk about some of the methodology behind how the index was developed in terms of selecting regions and variables. We'll get into some of the variables specifically. I will then demonstrate how to use the interactive web application, and finally we will conclude the presentation. As I mentioned, the Thriving Index allows rural regions to measure their performance in relation to regions in Nebraska and other states. It's really a benchmarking tool that we hope policymakers and other stakeholders can use to look at how their region is doing on a wide variety of variables, which I'll show here in a few minutes. Again, it's developed in a partnership between the Bureau of Business Research and Rural Prosperity Nebraska and several other organizations. And we'd like to point out that similar barometers have been developed for urban areas of Nebraska, sort of as an inspiration for this project. In terms of methodology, the first step was to find the appropriate regions in Nebraska. So we sought to identify meaningful groups of counties, and there are already, other organizations have already developed regional groupings of counties in Nebraska, and we looked at some of these sources. So for example, the Department of Labor has regions that they've developed for Nebraska. The U.S. Economic Development Administration, the EDA, has developed regions, not just for Nebraska, but for states throughout the country. So we drew on these sources to what we think meaningfully group these counties into regions. And we drew on expertise from members of the Thriving Index team, so other individuals that provided input. And here's what we came up with. So we have 8 different regions that we are looking at and that we're providing comparisons for. So you can see in the upper left, North 81. So we pulled the Norfolk and the Columbus micropolitan statistical areas out of northeast Nebraska. Typically those counties in those micropolitan statistical areas are included in the northeast Nebraska region. For the purposes of this effort, we pulled those counties out because we wanted to look to see how the Norfolk and Columbus areas are doing. You can see the northeast region is what we commonly see on various maps of the northeast Nebraska region, but North 81's been pulled out. And the 2 counties that are part of the Sioux City MSA have been pulled out as well. Panhandle counties, you can see there, the Sandhills region you can see. Again, the Siouxland region, Dakota and Dixon counties are part of the Sioux City, Iowa MSA. So we consider those 2 separately. Southeast Nebraska, again, what we typically see in regional groupings, Southeast Nebraska just minus the Lincoln MSA and the Omaha MSA counties. There you can see southwest Nebraska, and then the Tri-Cities region, which really we wanted to see how the region including Grand Island, Kearney, and Hastings, and surrounding counties are faring. Again, we wanted to allow Nebraskans to compare their performance to the performance of similarly situated regions in other states. So for this effort, we focused on regions in the upper Midwest and the northern Great Plains. So you can see we looked at counties in Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming. And what we did in these counties, we went to, as it points out on the slide, we went to the EDA region, so the Economic Development Administration, who's already grouped counties into meaningful regions in all the states. So we relied on those regional groupings for non-Nebraska states. So we didn't get creative there, we just used the EDA regions. We won't get into the weeds too much on this, except to say that when we sought to identify those similarly situated regions in Nebraska and other states, here are the things we focused on. So we looked at the population size, we looked at the percent of population in micropolitan areas in those regions, the percent of farm and ranch income, percent employed in manufacturing, and distance from metropolitan areas. So we pulled data from a variety of sources, and this is all county level data that we aggregated up to those regional grouping levels. In the first line, you can see Mahalanobis matching was used to identify comparison regions. So again, not to get into the weeds, but this is just a technique that allows a researcher to group similarly situated, in this case regions, but it could be any other level of inquiry on various characteristics. And we actually had a student a couple of years ago help us out on this, and he did a very good job. So now looking at the thriving index variables. So what are the variables that we included in the various indices? You can see here are 17 variables that were included in 3 indexes, and these are all related to economic prosperity. So we have what's called the growth index, and you can see the variables included there, the economic opportunity and diversity index, and what we call the other prosperity index that captures other indicators of economic prosperity. There are 5 indexes related to economic conditions in the various regions. So demographic growth and renewal, education and skill, the presence of infrastructure and the cost of doing business, a quality of life index, and a social capital index. Again, you can see the variables included under each one of these indices, and if you go to the interactive web tool, which I'll demonstrate in a little bit, you can really explore what these variables are, as well as descriptions of what the variables are, where they come from, and why they're meaningful. So again, taking the county level information aggregated up to the regional level, we develop statistics for each region on each of the indices. We indexed all variables to 100 instead of using raw values for ease of comparison. So a value of 100 on each of these indicators is the average. Values above 100 represent values above the average, meaning a region is doing better than the average. Values below 100 mean that a region is doing worse than the average, or is below the average. I would like to point out, I'll go back a couple slides. So we have 3 economic prosperity indexes, 5 economic condition indexes. We combine all 8 of these, we average those to develop what we call the thriving index, and we'll see that here in a minute. So moving now to the interactive web application. You can access this web application through the Rural Prosperity Nebraska. Just navigate to ruralprosperityne.unl.edu/thriving-index. Next, find the Thriving Index option tab, and it will take you to this page. Scroll down, and you can see more information on the Thriving Index. You can download the 2020 report, as well as last year's report. Here are a couple of technical reports that just give you more information about the matching techniques we use, the variables used, and finally, toward the bottom of the page, you get to the interactive comparison tool. I will point out that sometimes you need to reload this when you land on the page, and it will refresh. For today's presentation, I'm going to take you to another page just for ease of viewing, so we can navigate around here a little bit and see what we have. I will point out for anyone interested on the webinar today that I used R, the statistical package R, to put this dashboard together. So R allows you to do many different things. This actually uses a package called Shiny. It's a Shiny dashboard is what we use to put this together. And again, a student here at the BBR, Michael Snyder, helped tremendously on this. He did a lot of work on this with us. Okay, so you get to the interactive web tool. You can see you have the option to choose charts or maps over here on the left, and you have 4 drop-down menus. And I'll show you how to use each one of these in a moment. But the default position for the application when you land here, it's showing the values for North 81. And the default is set to show you the Thriving Index score. Again, the Thriving Index is the average of those 8 other indexes that I showed you a moment ago. So we can see here that North 81, again, the Norfolk and Columbus micropolitan statistical areas, are faring pretty well on their Thriving Index score. So they have a value of 133. That's greater than all the other regions that they're being compared to. So it looks like North 81 is doing good. Toward the bottom of the graph on the x-axis, you can see the names of the different regions that North 81 is being compared to. But it's not that meaningful in terms of really understanding where these regions are located. So if you want to see a little bit better the regions to which North 81 is being compared, just click on Maps, and here you go. So these maps are coded in green. Darker colors are better. So you can see that North 81 is being compared to a region in central Minnesota, northwestern Illinois, southeastern Iowa, eastern Missouri, and central Missouri. Okay. So going back to the charts, if we're interested in other regions, how they're doing, we simply just drop down here. So moving from North 81 to Northeast, just click on there, and the Northeast region, being compared to 5 other regions, is sitting second on the Thriving Index. The Panhandle, compared to 6 other regions, is tied for 5th. Siouxland, compared to 5 other regions, is sitting 4th in their region, or 5th, I'm sorry. Okay. So you can explore the various regions just looking at the Thriving Index. So say we are interested in going beyond just that Thriving Index score. Say, for example, we're interested in demographic growth and renewal. Just drop down right there, click on demographic growth and renewal. And by default, this gives you the overall demographic growth and renewal score for each region. Okay. I would point out that demographic growth and renewal, this index is a measure of long-term population growth, age structure, and diversity. Again, by default, the graph takes you to the overall index score. North 81 is doing fairly well on this indicator. But say if we wanted to drop down and look at a more specific variable, a variable that is used to develop this demographic growth and renewal index score. We look at the dependency ratio. There is a description of each variable right down here, as well as the source where we got the information. But the dependency ratio, this is the share of the population below the age of 18 and over the age of 65. North 81 has a score of 57, which is fourth among its peers on this. So next we can go to median age, just to continue to demonstrate how we can navigate through this. Median age, younger median age is consistent with faster natural population growth due to more births and fewer deaths. So you can see North 81 is doing relatively better on this indicator than the dependency ratio. Okay. Again, if we want, we can go to the map and see it a little bit better spatially, how these things are laid out. Okay, so rather than continue to drop down and show you all the different variables and options we have there, I think I'd just encourage all the viewers to explore the tool on their own. And again, you can go in there, you can check these different indices, these more finer grained variables that we use, and look at these descriptions down here to really understand why we chose these variables and where we got them, things like that. There are a couple of things new this year compared to last year. So this year we do provide the option to go back to the 2019 data and go forward to the 2020. So again, we'll go to charts. So here's North 81 on demographic growth and renewal. If we wanted to see how they did last year compared to this year, we just go to 2019, and there you see it. Another feature that we added this year that's a little bit different from last year, if you go up to the upper right, click on that icon, you can see you have the option to export this to a PNG or to a PDF. Okay, so if you wanted to take this graph for whatever purpose or include it in a report, you can export the information here pretty easily and do that. So this concludes the demonstration of the interactive web tool. Okay. Okay, so just to conclude, this Thriving Index will help identify areas of economic strength in Nebraska regions and areas where Nebraska regions lag. Again, we hope that this tool, the Thriving Index and the interactive web tool, will allow community and state leaders to develop future-focused strategies to build on Nebraska's regional advantages and address areas of concern. The BBR and Rural Prosperity Nebraska welcome feedback on anything you see in the report or in the interactive web tool. This includes variables included, regional comparisons. If you think your region should be compared to another region, another state that we didn't consider, we'd be happy to hear from you. And we'd also be happy to hear, in terms of the web application, if there's a better way to present the data, or if you try to export the data, one of those graphs, and you don't like the way it looks or something like that. We're happy to take any feedback that anybody has on any of those things. I would point out a couple of future directions that we're looking at. So we hope to add a new index related to inclusivity in the future. This is something we've been looking at. It's not set in stone, but it's something we have considered. And in terms of future directions, we hope to release the next report in the spring of 2022. I'd just like to point out that the project leads on this effort are Eric Thompson here at the UNL Bureau of Business Research, and Bree Doherty, the Associate Dean of the College of Business and Technology and Associate Professor of Finance at UNK. At this time, I'll take any questions that you might have. Okay, the first question says, is this data set available via an API or any other way? So we personally have not made the raw data available for consumption. I believe if you go to the report, you can access, not very easily, you might have to copy and paste it from a PDF or something like that, the indexed values. So again, we didn't use the raw values from the census or Bureau of Labor Statistics or anything like that. We indexed everything at that 100 level being the mean. So in terms of accessing the data that way, yes, you can access it. But in terms of providing the data via an API, that is not currently possible. I will point out that through R, the way I pull down census data, like American Community Survey data, there are tools in R that do allow you to do that. It's not necessarily an API, it's just a package that will allow you to pull down that information as it becomes available. So. Okay. We'll point out that there's another webinar coming up on October 1st related to the economic impact of the Nebraska Agricultural Production Complex. And if you have any questions, again, if you have any feedback or any thoughts on the report or the interactive web tool, here's my contact information. Feel free to contact me at any time. And if you'd like to connect with the BBR, if you'd like to receive updates on monthly or periodic BBR reports, you can feel free to connect with the BBR via LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. Or you can stay in touch by subscribing to the newsletter through the email on the screen. So another question is, will a slide deck and/or recording be made available? We're happy to make this available. The recording will be. I believe these get uploaded to YouTube once they are recorded and kind of finished off. And I'm happy to make the slide deck available to you as well. Just feel free to send me an email and ask, just ask, and I can send that to you. Okay. Not seeing any other questions, I'll go ahead and wrap up, and I'll just thank everybody for your time today. Thanks for sitting in. Again, we're very proud of the work we've done on the tool. Dr. Thompson, Dr. Doherty have done a ton of work collecting the data, as well as an army of undergraduate students. They've done a ton of work collecting the data, aggregating the data. It's been a very fun and interesting process to be a part of. Putting together the web application was a great experience for myself and our undergraduate research assistant. So again, I thank everybody for taking the time to sit in today, and hope you've learned more about how to use the interactive web tool and the Thriving Index. Thank you very much.